Her first visit to a specialist left Amelia frozen the moment she spotted her doctor. Ethan, a wealthy man and the ex-lover she once walked away from. She had fled from him once before. Would she do it again? Watch now to uncover the truth. Behind this pivotal meeting, at a private upscale clinic in New York, Amelia Carter didn't want to be there. In fact, she had almost canceled this appointment multiple times over the last week. She wasn't the kind to ignore her health, but this situation felt different. Too personal, too unsettling, too frightening. A small lump beneath the skin of her left breast, painless but impossible to ignore. She tried to convince herself it was nothing, just hormonal changes, a harmless cyst, no cause for alarm. But then came the sleepless nights, the quiet panic creeping in, whispering doubts she could no longer silence. So, she booked an appointment at one of Manhattan's most prestigious clinics. Now, sitting in the sterile waiting room, the weight of anxiety pressed heavily on her chest. The soft hum of the air vent filled the silence, but her palms were sweaty. She tried to focus on the medical magazine on the table, but the words blurred together. Deep breath. This is just a routine checkup, nothing more. Amelia Carter. She flinched at the sound of her name. A nurse in blue scrubs appeared at the door, clipboard in hand, wearing a practiced smile. Amelia swallowed hard and rose, willing herself to move as she followed the nurse down the brightly lit hallway. The exam room was spacious, sleek, and unmistakably luxurious. Soft lighting bounced off polished steel surfaces. The faint scent of antiseptic mixed with a delicate hint of jasmine from a diffuser nearby. Before she even took her seat, a voice, deep, familiar, and completely unexpected, cut through the quiet. "It's been a while, Amelia." She froze. Her heart skipped. A beat. Her breath caught. Slowly she turned. There stood Ethan Hayes, dressed in a crisp white coat, hands casually tucked into his pockets, framed by the clinical glow of the overhead lights. His sharp jawline, high cheekbones, and deep brown eyes she had once traced with her fingertips, drowning in memories. 3 years. 3 years since she last saw him. 3 years since that night she left his apartment, eyes burning, clutching the only suitcase she had brought with her. 3 years since his final text. One brutal sentence. That cut deeper than any knife. "I'm sorry, but I can't do this anymore." A chill ran down her spine. She should leave, walk out, reschedule with another doctor. But her feet refused to move. Ethan watched her, his gaze steady and unreadable. "You can take a seat." Calm. Professional. Like this was just another appointment, but it wasn't. Not when he still called her you. Not Miss Carter, not Patient Carter. Just you. Her fingers tightened around the strap of her bag. Slowly, stiffly, she sat down in the exam chair, painfully aware of his eyes tracking her every move. He flipped through her file, brow furrowed. "You found a lump?" His voice was clinical, detached. Too detached. She hated it. Hated that this was how they spoke now. Hated that even after all this time, his words could still tighten her chest. "It's small, not painful," she said, steady but distant. "I thought I should get it checked," she stressed. Placing a deliberate barrier between them. Ethan nodded but didn't look away. "All right, let's take a look." What was worse? Letting him examine her? Or that after 3 years, just one sentence from him still made her heart falter? She wasn't ready for this. Maybe she never would be. What would you do if your ex suddenly became your doctor at your most vulnerable moment? Stay or run away? Amelia felt trapped, like an animal caught in a cage with no escape. The room suddenly felt too small, too quiet, too suffocating. "We'll begin the exam now," Ethan said. A dozen thoughts rushed through her mind, each a desperate excuse to stand and leave. But she stayed perfectly still, forcing calm while her mind spiraled into chaos. Ethan said nothing else, but she felt it, the change in the air between them. This was no longer just doctor and patient. This was something unnamed, a collision of past and present tangled in ways neither expected. He stayed professional, posture rigid, in control. But Amelia knew him too well. She saw the sharp focus in his eyes as he watched her reactions. 3 years. 3 years. And he could still make her feel small. Not because he intended to, but because his presence held that much power. Ethan pulled his chair closer. His voice dropped low, measured. "It's been a while, Amelia." She tensed, pressing, back against the chair as if it was the only thing holding her steady. He said it so casually, as if they were mere acquaintances who had bumped into each other. Nothing like the man she had loved most, who had walked away without explanation. Ethan waited for her to respond, but Amelia only nodded, unable to trust her voice. A silence stretched between them before he pulled on a pair of light blue latex gloves. She wasn't ready for this. Ethan moved closer, the space between them shrinking to mere inches. She caught the faint trace of his cologne, the same scent she once knew so well, the one that lingered on her skin long after he was gone. She held her breath as he reached for the hem of her patient gown. "Relax." His voice was steady, clinical, but she heard the tension beneath his control. He was trying not to make this personal, and she was trying not to feel anything, but her body betrayed her. Ethan's touch was light, professional, nothing inappropriate, but it was real. The warmth beneath his gloves seeped through. In that instant, the past crashed back, merciless and relentless. She remembered the way he had touched her before, not like this, never like this. His hands had once been gentle, almost reverent, tracing her skin like he had memorized every inch. He had touched her in ways that unraveled her, like no one else ever had, and she hated herself for remembering it so vividly. Ethan moved with precision, fingers pressing lightly against her skin, searching for anything unusual. Amelia bit the inside of her cheek, forcing herself to keep her breathing steady. The tension along her spine wasn't from fear or uncertainty about her health. It was because the only man who had ever truly undone her was touching her again. Completely different reason. Did he feel it too? Ethan didn't say a word, but she saw the tight clench of his jaw. He wasn't as unaffected as he wanted to seem. She felt it in the way his hand hesitated for the briefest second, in the way he quickly composed himself in the silence between them. A silence heavy with unfinished words, buried memories, and unanswered questions. Finally, he pulled back, removed his gloves, and met her eyes. For the first time since the exam began. "There's nothing concerning," he said, his voice neutral. "But I'd still like you to do additional tests, just to be sure you not miss Carter. Not patient. Carter. Just you." Amelia couldn't speak for a moment. Her pulse was unsteady, betraying everything she wanted to ignore. She took a slow breath, forcing logic to override emotion. "All right?" She said, her voice quiet but firm. Ethan nodded, saying nothing more, but they both knew this wasn't just doctor and patient. They had never truly ended. They had simply stopped. Midway, Amelia left the clinic with a strange weight pressing against her chest. The exam had gone smoothly. No alarming signs, nothing medically concerning. But something else had happened in that room. Something unspoken, something undeniable, something that lingered, haunting and heavy even through the thin layer of latex. She could still feel the heat of Ethan's touch on her skin. It wasn't an unfamiliar touch. It was a memory, a reminder that there had once been so much more between them that she had once known. Those hands as intimately as her own. She didn't want to think about that. She needed something to pull her out of the spiral threatening to consume her, a cup of coffee, a change of scenery somewhere, without Ethan Hayes watching her every move. So she stepped into a small cafe near the clinic, one she had visited a few times back when she worked in the area. She ordered a cappuccino, found a seat by the window, and told herself it was over, just a checkup, just a coincidence, nothing more. But then, just as she brought the cup to her lips, a voice spoke from behind her. "You still like cappuccino?" I see she froze. She didn't need to turn around. She already knew Ethan. A small cafe just a block from the clinic. Amelia tightened her grip around the warm ceramic cup as if it were the only thing keeping her grounded. She didn't need to look to confirm it was him. She knew that voice. She had once woken up to it murmuring against her skin in the morning light. She had once listened to it reading her favorite crime novels on sleepless nights. She had once heard it whisper a final message, the last words before it all fell apart. And now, after 3 years, it was here again, clear, close, as if time had never passed. She took a slow breath carefully, placing her cup down before turning around. Ethan stood there, a black coffee in his hand, his posture deceptively relaxed. No, not quite. He looked the same, the tailored gray suit, the perfectly styled hair, the effortless confidence. But his eyes, there was something different there. Not warmth, not distance, something in between, something undefined. What a coincidence, Ethan said, tilting his head slightly. A coincidence. Amelia almost laughed. New York was massive, hundreds of cafes, millions of people, and yet somehow he was here now. But she didn't call him out on it. She just watched him for a long moment before lifting her cappuccino again, taking a slow sip. "You still drink it black?" I see a meaningless observation. A safe response. Ethan smirked, slightly, though the expression never quite reached his eyes. Some habits are hard to break. She set her cup down, fingers lacing together on the table. This was the moment to end the conversation. A polite nod, a vague smile, a return to the unread. Articles on her phone, but she didn't. Something in his gaze, something searching, kept her from looking away. Silence stretched between them. Not awkward, but charged, the kind of silence that only existed between people who had once loved each other, who had once shared things deeper than words, but who now stood on opposite sides of time. It was Ethan who finally spoke. "I always wondered," he murmured, voice low, unreadable. "How you've been since you left." The words hit her like a fist to the chest. She had waited 3 years to hear that question, and now that it had finally come, she wasn't sure if she wanted to answer it. Amelia had been avoiding Ethan for a week after that encounter at the cafe. She thought it could end there. She told herself it was nothing more than a coincidence, a fleeting moment dredging up memories she had spent years trying to bury. But life was never that simple, because Ethan didn't disappear. He didn't call. He didn't text. He didn't try to see her yet. Somehow, his presence lingered like a ghost. She couldn't shake every morning when she looked in the mirror. She wondered if she was truly okay after seeing him again every night as she lay in bed trying to sleep. She remembered the way he had looked at her in that cafe, like there were still things left. She knew she had to leave New York. She had planned for this, a stable job in Chicago, a fresh start, a city without Ethan Hayes. She was ready to go. At least that's what she kept telling herself. But just days before she was set to leave, she had to return to the clinic, one last appointment, one final test result, and that was her mistake. The air in the exam room was too heavy to breathe. She didn't know what was worse, the fact that she was back here face to face with Dr. Ethan Hayes, or the fact that the moment she stepped inside, she knew he had been waiting for her. Not as a doctor, waiting for his patient, but as Ethan waiting for Amelia. He stood near his desk, arms crossed, gaze calm. But beneath that calm was something else, something she couldn't ignore. Amelia tightened her grip on her bag, forcing herself to keep her expression neutral. She was here for one reason, to get her results, and then she would leave. But then, Ethan spoke, and just like that, every plan she had unraveled. "Were you really going to leave without saying goodbye?" She froze. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She didn't need to ask what he meant. She already knew. For a split second, she wondered how he found out. Then, She remembered New York wasn't that big when you had mutual friends. Someone must have told him. She forced her voice to stay. Even Ethan, this isn't your concern anymore. A flicker of something crossed his face, so brief. She almost missed it. Then he pushed away from the desk, taking a slow step toward her. Is that? So his voice was low, no longer cold, but something H entirely. She tensed, but didn't move back. Yes. Her gaze met his steady, defiant. Ethan studied her as if he was searching for something in her eyes, then with a quiet, almost unsettling calm. He spoke again. Then why is your heart still racing? Amelia's breath caught. She could deny everything she could tell him. They had ended long ago. She could say this meeting meant nothing, but her body betrayed her. Because right now, her pulse was pounding so loudly she was sure he could hear it. She took a step back on instinct, creating space between them. Ethan noticed, and for the briefest moment a faint smirk played on his lips. Not mocking, but knowing because he had his. Answer? He still affected her, and they both knew it. A surge of frustration flared inside her. She couldn't let him pull her back in goodbye. Ethan. Her voice wavered slightly, but she didn't care. She turned toward the door, reaching for the handle. But before she could walk away, his hand caught her wrist. Not forceful, not demanding, but firm enough that she couldn't ignore it. She went still. Her heart pounded so violently she swore it echoed in her ears. She didn't turn around, but she felt his breath near her ear. If you really want to go, I won't stop you. His voice was deep, steady, heavy with meaning. But look me in the eyes and tell me you don't feel anything for me anymore. Amelia clenched her free hand into a fist, nails digging. Into her palm she could say it. She should say it, but she couldn't not when she could still remember exactly how it felt when he touched her, not when she still woke up in the middle of the night heart-aching from dreams of him, not when even after. 3 years. She had never truly forgotten Ethan Hayes. She shut her eyes, took a slow, shuddering breath, and with every ounce of willpower she had left, she pulled her hand from his grasp. Goodbye, Ethan. She said it again this time, steadier. Then she walked away, leaving the room behind, trying not to let her heart break all over again. Amelia left Ethan's office with a weight in her chest. She had thought she could run again, that as long as she walked out that door, as long as she didn't look back, everything would be over. She was wrong, because even though she had left the clinic, she could still feel the ghost of Ethan's touch on her skin. Even though she had walked away, his words still echoed in her mind, burrowing into places she didn't want to acknowledge. Look me in the eyes and tell me you don't feel anything for me anymore. She hadn't been able to do it. She had wanted to, needed to. But in that moment, standing in front of him, she couldn't force the words out now as she stood in front of her apartment door. She leaned her forehead against the wood, eyes shut tight, trying to push everything down. By tomorrow morning, she would be gone. This would be her last night in New York. No past, no Ethan, no lingering ghosts to pull her back into a place she had fought so hard to escape. But then her phone buzzed inside her bag, a message from a number she had memorized, no matter how many times she had tried to erase it. Ethan, just meet me one last time. If you still want to leave, I won't stop you, Amelia. Clenched the phone in her hand, she shouldn't go, but somehow her feet carried her there anyway. The last goodbye. The park was eerily quiet at night. Streetlights cast faint golden streaks along the stone pathways, stretching into the distance. The air was cold, tinged with the crisp bite of early winter. Amelia pulled her coat tighter around herself. But it wasn't the cold that unsettled her. She shouldn't be here the moment she saw Ethan's message. She knew she should have ignored Dee, but she came anyway, and she hated herself for it. Ethan stood a few feet away, waiting. His usual confidence was absent tonight. The glow of the streetlights highlighted the sharp lines of his face, but there was something different about him, a quiet exhaustion, an unspoken sadness. And when their eyes met, her heart clenched. No, she couldn't let herself be pulled into this again. Amelia exhaled, steadying herself before speaking. "What do you want, Ethan?" Her voice was even almost. Ethan hesitated for a moment. Before finally speaking, "I know I hurt you." She looked away, focusing on the pavement beneath her feet, willing her breathing to stay even. "I'm not here to apologize," he continued. Voice low, steady, because no matter how many times I say, "I'm sorry," it won't change what happened between us. Amelia let out a quiet laugh, one that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Then why are you here?" Ethan stepped closer, though not close enough to touch. "Because I need you to know I was wrong." Her fingers curled into fists inside her coat pockets. She didn't want to hear this, not now, not when she had spent so much time stitching herself back together. "Ethan, it's too late." Her voice was soft but firm. "I'm leaving New York. This doesn't matter anymore." Ethan's brows furrowed, his gaze sharpening. "If it doesn't matter, then why are you here?" She stilled. She could lie. She could tell him she only came to say a proper goodbye. She could tell him she felt nothing anymore, but they both knew the truth. If she had truly moved on, she never would have come. Ethan studied her for a long moment before taking a breath. "I thought you'd be better off without me." Her head snapped up, eyes wide. "I thought letting you go would give you the life you deserved," he continued, voice quieter now, one where you weren't waiting on a man who buried himself in work, a man who never knew how to love you the way you needed. A bitter smile tugged at his lips. "But I was wrong." The wind rustled through the trees, filling the silence between them. Amelia's heartbeat pounded against her ribs. She needed to leave, needed to walk away before these words had the chance to unravel her. But before she could move, Ethan reached for her hand, not to pull her back, not to hold her in place. Just a simple touch. A question, not a demand. A choice, not a plea. "I'm not perfect, Amelia." His voice was barely above a whisper. "But if you give me a chance, I want to try for you, for us." She swallowed hard. She could walk away. She could end this right now. But then she looked into his eyes, and for the first time, she didn't see the man who had once broken her. She saw a man willing to fight for her. A man willing to put aside his pride, his walls, everything, to ask her to stay for the first time. He wasn't trying to control her. He was giving her the power to decide, and for the first time, she wanted to believe him. Can love mend the past? Or are some things broken beyond repair? Amelia didn't know how long she had been standing there. The cold night air whispered through her hair. But the shiver that ran down her spine had nothing to do with the New York winter and everything to do with Ethan's words. "I'm not perfect, Amelia, but I want to try for you." Ethan's hand was still lightly wrapped around hers, not pulling her back, but not letting her slip away so easily. Either he was giving her a choice, no pressure, no control. It was the most sincere offer he had ever made. Amelia's throat tightened. She wanted to believe him, but she also remembered how trusting him before had caused her the deepest pain. Slowly, carefully, she withdrew her hand, not because she felt nothing, but because she was terrified. Terrified that if she let him hold on just a moment longer, she might lose the strength to walk away. "Ethan," her voice barely louder than a whisper. He didn't reply. Instead, he simply waited, watching her. Amelia pressed her lips together, trying to steady her nerves. "You say you want to try?" she began, taking a slow breath. "But how do I know this time will be any different?" Silence stretched between them as if he had wrestled with that question countless times before. Finally, he exhaled, never breaking eye contact. "You don't," he said simply. Yet it was also the most honest answer she could have hoped for. He wasn't promising he'd change overnight or that everything would be perfect. He was only telling her the truth. No one could guarantee what the future held, not even him. Soft, bittersweet smile flickered across Amelia's lips. 3 years ago, I told myself you would never choose me, she murmured, her voice quiet but raw with vulnerability. Ethan's hands clenched into fists at his sides. Then slowly, he nodded. I was wrong, Amelia. No excuses, no justifications, just 4 simple words carrying the weight of years of regret. Her chest tightened. How long had she waited to hear that? But now that she had, she wasn't sure what to do with it. She turned away, eyes drifting to the still surface of the lake before them. Ethan didn't press her. He simply waited, because he knew this was a decision she had to make on her own, and this time, he wouldn't take that choice from her. They sat, in silence, neither distant nor close, suspended in a moment neither dared to break. A question lingered between them, one only Amelia could answer. That night, she didn't give him an answer. She sat beside Ethan, letting his words sink into the deepest corners of her mind. She didn't walk away right then, but she didn't stay either. When the air grew colder, she rose quietly, whispered a soft goodbye, and left. No promises, no commitments. Just a space between them filled with everything left unsaid. But they both knew this conversation wasn't finished. The next day would be her last in New York. If Ethan wanted to prove himself, he'd have to do more than just speak words. The final morning in New York dawned quietly. The soft clink of a spoon against porcelain echoed in the cozy cafe as Amelia stirred her cappuccino. She was used to this feeling, sitting alone in a coffee shop, savoring warmth before heading somewhere new. But this time, it felt different. For the first time in years, she wasn't sure she really wanted to leave. For the first time in years, she didn't have a clear answer. The cafe door opened, letting in a chill. Amelia didn't need to look up to know who had come in. She felt him, Ethan. He didn't hurry. He walked calmly to her table, setting his black coffee down across from her. No questions, no hesitation. Like it was the most natural thing in the world. Like sitting there together this morning had never been uncertain. Amelia met his gaze, wondering what he might say. Would he beg her to stay? Would he complicate everything with some heartfelt plea? But he didn't. Instead, Ethan smiled. Soft, steady. You're still leaving, aren't you? Amelia blinked, surprised by his words. She had expected him to try and change her mind, but Ethan didn't. He respected her choice, even if it hurt him. She nodded, a small, deliberate motion. I think so. A quiet moment stretched between them, but it wasn't heavy. Neither rushed to fill the silence with empty words. They simply sat there, warmed by the cafe's glow, sharing a moment before she was gone. Ethan took a slow sip of his coffee, then set the cup down. I can't promise I'll follow you to Chicago, he said, steady and honest. And I don't want you to stay just because of me. Amelia tightened her fingers around her cappuccino, feeling the heat seep through. Ethan had never been the type to make promises he couldn't keep. He wasn't one for grand declarations or painting perfect futures just to hold her close, and that's exactly why she listened. He leaned forward slightly, eyes never leaving hers. But if you're willing to give me a chance, he paused, choosing his words carefully, let me prove I'm worth it this time. There were no forever promises, no grand assurances that everything would be flawless or that he would fight for her endlessly. Amelia didn't answer right away. She let his words settle, letting herself think, letting herself feel. Then, for the first time in their conversation, she smiled. A genuine, unguarded smile. She reached out, brushing her fingers over the back of his hand before resting there. Light but certain. Then let's see where this goes. Ethan's fingers curled around hers, firm but gentle. I've always liked a challenge. They sat there without rush, no ultimatums, no expectations. Just two people choosing to be in the moment together. Amelia would still leave. Ethan wouldn't chase her. But that didn't mean they were finished. As they stepped out of the cafe, hand in hand, it wasn't an ending. It was something else, a second chance, not built on empty promises, but on a story they would write together. Love isn't always a straight path. Sometimes it takes detours. Sometimes you get lost. Sometimes old wounds need time to heal before you can move forward. Amelia and Ethan had lost each other once. The pain of their past made them believe there was no second chance. But when fate brought them back, they realized love isn't about perfection. It's about choice. They didn't give up careers or promise fairy tale endings. They simply chose to try, to trust, to walk this path together, whether in New York, Chicago, or wherever else life took them. No grand finale, no unfinished business, just a new beginning, a chance to love again. This time, with open eyes and open hearts. Do you believe everyone deserves a second chance at love? Share your thoughts below. If you love deeply emotional stories like this, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss the next one. Thanks for joining us on this journey. See you in the next story.